Your choice to decide if you want to get a vaccine or a booster is thanks to the sacrifice of others. And I want to give credit today for those people who went out of their way, sacrificed their jobs. For some, they went to prison. And you have to acknowledge it was inconvenient at the time for many Canadians, especially if they lived in the capital. But there was an opportunity for these truckers to make a statement that resonated across the world. Why did I think about it? Well, it was just coincidental that I was at an in person event. I very rarely go to in person events and can't think of when last I'd been to one. Usually, most of my interviews and discussions are live. And so I just happened to be in the vicinity and thought, well, why not go along, hear what it is that people are saying and doing? And luckily for me, when I was there, I happened to have the privilege of meeting Dr. Peter McCulla. And as you can see, he's one of those voices who has continued to challenge what has been happening. And listening to him speak was quite inspirational because he said the courage to fight. And that's really what happened with regards to the truckers and what they did. They were very courageous and it came at a cost. As I said, some were jailed. Some I think are still in jail, but they maybe for other related events, not necessarily for the protest. But the point is that it came at a cost financially in terms of their professional working, and as I said, in terms of jail time. What you have to reflect on is what would have happened if they didn't do what they did at the time. I want to play a short clip because I want you to remember and reflect on what it was that they did. And I'll come back and share a few more thoughts about what I had learned at the time. Listen to this.
There are thousands of passionate, patriotic, and peaceful Canadians on the Hill right now who just want to be heard.
I support the truckers and everyone standing up for the freedom movement. Go truckers.
I support the Canadian Truckers Freedom Convoy to Ottawa.
I wanted to come on here to let you guys know that I 150% support the Truckers Convoy headed to Ottawa.
Be there Saturday?
I'll be supporting the truckers.
Shining on me now. And the stars are shining on me now.
Protest day number 3. We are standing firm. We are holding the line. We got our big Canadian flag over here. Maybe this driver will talk to us, right? You told me earlier you're an owner-operator? Or used to be?
Used to be.
Still are?
Well, my truck's at the shop right now. Get it fixed up and then we get to go again.
So, you told me you've been here for every day so far since Saturday?
Every day since Saturday morning, 5 a.m.
Well, we appreciate you being out here, man.
It's the least I can do. If I lose my job, I got nothing better to do than be out here and see if the others don't face the same problem I have.
Exactly. We're all in it for the freedom of our country back, right?
It's the name of the game right there.
Shining on me now.
That's a very, very powerful presentation. And I think that we have to acknowledge that at that time, that was in January of 2022. And when I think about the timeline that occurred after that event, by March 2022, the UK changed its vaccine mandate stance to not fire about 10% of their workforce. And it was probably at about 10% still because of the trigger of protests that occurred across the world, because people were recognizing the danger of these kinds of mandates. Now, from my perspective, from a scientific perspective, I was concerned because I knew there was limited understanding about the pathophysiology. And so I knew that, therefore, you had to be cautious with what you were doing. And certainly a mandate was not scientific because they didn't understand the longer term implications. But that aside, without that struggle for freedom that happened in Canada, I am not sure if we would have had that same system occurring in different parts of the world. Australia, France, the UK, the US, all of a sudden, people had courage to fight because they instinctively knew that something wasn't quite right. And so, for all the people who were upset with the truckers across the world because they had lots of criticism, just remember that if you have opted not to get a booster, if you had been vaccinated at the time, you would not have had that option if it wasn't for the sacrifice of people giving you a choice. And that's really all it's about. Some people may choose to have it, but at the moment the numbers are down significantly, and people would not have had that choice if there wasn't some kind of intervention. One of the lessons, again, that I recognized when I went to this event and I listened to one of the speakers there, Regina Wattil, she's a statistician. And if you, I hope to get her on for a live discussion, and she will demonstrate exactly how the statistics were manipulated so that things appeared as they weren't. It's a really important point because we have to go back to the fundamentals to try and understand what was right then that would make government so sure, but then change their mind within a year, where across the world these mandates no longer existed. What was wrong with the science? What made them change their mind? And these questions haven't actually been properly answered, and they need to be answered because they have implications for the future. Now, without that occurring, it's a useful reflection to ask, what would have happened if no one had done what the truckers did? If everyone had gone along where the mandates increased, where the unvaccinated cohort had to, because of the pressure with financial things, had to get vaccinated, and then you would have had boosters at least twice a year, maybe three times a year, as the variants continued to evolve. You have to remember, Omicron had only just appeared in about December 2021. And so January 2022, that was prior to the recognition that we would have had so many other variants coming out from the original BA1 Omicron variant. And so then you would have to imagine that the mandates would have been in place for work, for travel, for school, and it would just have kept on going, where everyone would have had to follow the line, unless somebody or some group, similar to what happened with the truckers, stepped out of line and challenged the mandates. So that's a lesson in itself. And that's really an important takeaway that everyone has to reflect on. If that could have happened then, what is in place that would prevent a similar thing from happening in the future? And you really have to go back in history. This is why I mentioned it, because I only recognized the timeline when I listened to the people talking and the passion in their voices as to what had happened, and the fact that they are determined to try and get to understand how some of the things that happened actually went through governments. These are the kinds of questions that really, really need to be answered. I think that my mind was opened just by seeing the bravery and the truth of some of these people. It wasn't necessarily the truckers themselves, but a similar kind of thinking that exists in Canada that really helps them to stand out from other people. So credit has to be given to Canadians generally, and specifically this group, for standing against the tide and inspiring different people in the world to find their courage. Let's not forget what was done for us in the past, and let's hope that we don't make the same kind of mistakes in the future. Have a great evening.